Thanks to the security chief publicly setting the record straight, public opinion of Hae Gang made a complete U-turn, and he was hailed as the neighborhood hero once again. Hae Gang knew all of this was Xylee's doing and thanked her sincerely. Xylee had long tracked down the two young men who secretly filmed and edited the malicious clip. She threatened them with legal provisions covering unauthorized filming and slander, forcing them to hand over the full uncut footage, which she then passed to the security chief. This was what enabled the chief's truthful statement under his real name. Hae Gang planned to keep delivering parcels for residents until he won the chairmanship of the residence committee, at which point he would push to allow delivery trucks inside the compound. Unexpectedly, the management director contacted him that very day to inform him delivery vehicles had been granted permanent access, meaning his parcel delivery volunteer work was no longer needed. What Hae Gang did not know was that a powerful figure had been watching his every move. Jungwan, the real owner of the entire residential complex, chairman of the real estate firm and head of a major political and business alliance. Cruel and ruthless, Jungwan showed no mercy to anyone who failed his expectations. 3 mayors and congressmen who had taken bribes from him botched his project approvals. He lured them onto a boat under the pretense of a sea fishing trip and subjected them to sadistic punishment. The 3 dignitaries, who usually carried great authority, knelt before Jungwan begging for mercy, vowing to do everything possible to push his projects through official reviews. If Jungwan could manipulate mayors and lawmakers at will, dealing with Hae Gang would be as easy as crushing an ant. Enraged that Hae Gang had stolen the spotlight on his property, he ordered his subordinates to contact Chairman Soo and authorize delivery trucks to enter the complex, stripping Hae Gang of his chance to win residents' favor through parcel deliveries. With the parcel delivery campaign no longer viable, their associate told Hae Gang and Xylee to appear in public around the complex more often to maintain visibility. The pair headed to the spot where local mothers regularly gathered, putting on an act as a loving married couple. The group of mothers already knew Hae Gang and swarmed around them eagerly, asking about their married life. Their conflicting answers almost exposed their fake marriage. Xylee hastily claimed she counted years based on the official registration date. They slipped up again on the next question, and Hae Gang scrambled to cover it up by saying he had been referring to his actual age. Fortunately, the mothers suspected nothing, and the awkward topic was quickly brushed aside. A few days later, a meeting of labor representatives was held to elect the new residence committee chairperson. Before the meeting, Xylee had broken down the political landscape for Hae Gang. The incumbent chairman Soo had won 4 consecutive terms, and several labor representatives had held their posts for years, all loyal confidants who formed an unbreakable inner circle. Breaking through their block would be nearly impossible for Hae Gang, yet as soon as the meeting opened, Hae Gang raised his hand without hesitation and announced his candidacy for chair, becoming Chairman Soo's sole rival. Desperate to secure Soo's position, his loyal allies tag-teamed to heap praise on the incumbent while belittling the inexperienced Hae Gang, hoping to make him back down. Hae Gang remained unshaken, fully determined to see the race through to the end. Watching Hae Gang's soaring popularity, Chairman Soo grew increasingly anxious. When a local shop owner came to bribe him with cash, he spotted Hae Gang's file by chance and instantly recognized Hae Gang's past as a former gang boss. Armed with this secret, Chairman Soo immediately called a gathering of building representatives and arranged a live stream open to all residents. Once everyone had assembled, he publicly exposed Hae Gang's gang background. Hae Gang did not deny it, only explaining he had long since left the criminal underworld and severed all ties with his past. The cunning Soo had prearranged technical failures for the live broadcast. The feed cut off the second Hae Gang admitted his gang history, cutting off every word of his subsequent explanation. From that day onward, residents shunned Hae Gang as if he were a monster. Whenever he stepped into an elevator, everyone shrank into the corners. Even when he tidied up trash as usual, he met with disdainful glares from neighbors. Ms. Zhang, who had lost the election, took delight in his misfortune and jeered at him, quoting the old saying that fortunes rise and fall with time, mocking that he had finally fallen from grace. Hae Gang fired back at once, reminding her their feud had all started when she fabricated lies about damaged parcels to sabotage him. The two argued for a long time, yet gradually their resentment faded away. Ms. Zhang had long resented Chairman Soo's clique for monopolizing the residence committee and siphoning profits from neighborhood construction projects, and she began to sympathize with Hae Gang's predicament. To lift his spirits, Ms. Zhang took Hae Gang to a protest demanding the relocation of the Line 3 subway exit to the front gate of the residential compound. After the demonstration, Ms. Zhang treated everyone to a meal. When Hae Gang stepped outside to take a phone call, she asked the other participants whether such protests could ever make a real difference. One attendee confessed that ordinary citizens like them could never alter official government plans. It was akin to ants shaking a towering tree. Most people only came along for the spectacle. Another protester mentioned the government had once revised construction plans abruptly after precious cultural relics were unearthed at a building site. At the mention of cultural relics, a bold scheme popped into Hae Gang's head. If he buried artifacts in advance and pretended to discover them by accident, widespread media coverage might force authorities to shift the planned subway exit. Once the station stood right outside the compound, housing prices would surge. All residents would hail him as a hero who brought prosperity, and no one would fixate on his former gang ties ever again. Thrilled by his plan, Hae Gang rushed home and told his subordinates to contact a close friend living in Japan. Back when Hae Gang ran a casino, a Japanese gambler had been hunted down by vengeful rivals. Hae Gang had fought off the attackers and saved the man's life at great risk to himself. The Japanese gambler had regarded Hae Gang as an unbreakable brother ever since, promising to help him with any trouble he might face in the future. When Hae Gang asked to borrow ancient relics, the man agreed without hesitation. Two of Hae Gang's men traveled to Japan to retrieve the artifacts, then followed Hae Gang under cover of night to bury them in the zone designated for the subway exit. The next day, Hae Gang rented a large coach bus and brought Ms. Zhang and the other protesters to the construction site. Ms. Zhang believed Hae Gang had been moved by her persistence and threw herself wholeheartedly into the demonstration. Meanwhile, Hae Gang slipped over to the spot where the relics were buried and deliberately tripped over the objects hidden beneath the soil. Ms. Zhang hurried over to check and soon dug a strange artifact out of the mud. News of the cultural relic discovery at the construction site hit the headlines immediately. The government considered halting the original project and relocating the subway exit to Hae Gang's neighborhood. Word spread fast, and housing prices in the compound shot up instantly. Everything unfolded exactly as Hae Gang had plotted. Residents praised him once more as a hero and a lucky charm, no longer dwelling on his gang past, basking in the thrill of his victory. Hae Gang remained unaware that the original subway construction zone was a lucrative real estate project Jungwan had fought tooth and nail to secure. Per standard regulations, any construction must cease immediately upon the discovery of relics, halting all development on the land for a minimum of 3 years. Hae Gang's clever turnaround had single-handedly ruined Jungwan's massively profitable venture. Seething with hatred, Jungwan swore he would make Hae Gang pay dearly. Before long, the formal election for Residence Committee chair was held. Having single-handedly driven up property values, Hae Gang won the race without the slightest doubt and took office as the new chairperson. As Hae Gang and his allies celebrated wildly, the defeated former chairman soon knelt before Jungwan, weeping and begging for mercy. Shortly afterward, Hae Gang crossed paths with Jungwan inside the compound for the first time. Spotting bloodstains on the man's hands and face, he instantly realized this was no ordinary resident. Jungwan flashed a chilling, sinister smile and offered hollow congratulations on Hae Gang's election victory. Before leaving, he left behind a cryptic, menacing warning.